Greetings. Welcome to African Spiritual Resistance. This is fiction versus nonfiction, the fiction versus nonfiction episode. We're going to give folks some time to get in here. Welcome, Keiko. I believe it's, these glasses, Sukada, a new member, Keiko Sukada. Welcome. Um, Welcome to all of you out there. Um, on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and all over the internets. Welcome to African Spiritual Resistance. Um, I think my wife's going to be here. She's at another Oshun Festival. We had Oshun Festival. Greetings, Eugene. Greetings, Eugene Mason. We had an Oshun Festival a few weeks ago, and there's another one that she's attending now. Um, Her, a couple of my daughters, granddaughter. So there, several of three of my daughters, maybe more, if some other ones went to it, but they're there having a good time, I'm sure. My wife's probably teaching a class or something. So we're going to get started. If she comes in, she can pick right up where we're at. But last week, part of what we dealt with truth versus fact, right? And truth is rooted in opinion. Fact is actual, can be proven through evidence from the 5 of the 14 senses. Okay. So, greetings, Kamal Rashad. But this week, we're dealing with fiction versus nonfiction. You say, well, is that important? Well, it certainly is, particularly when you're dealing with people in academia, which we deal with daily, me and my wife, people outside of academia who just love to read, people who don't like to read, but should. Okay, and I think we all should, but some people don't like it. Particularly, uh, there are many people in what folks used to call the conscious community who don't read fiction, and we're going to deal with both. Okay, why you should read both, but one's more powerful when it comes to affecting change and affecting the thinking and emotions of people than the other. Okay? So texts are commonly classified as fiction or nonfiction. In the Eurocentric worldview, this distinction addresses whether a text discusses the world of the imagination. This is to the European, they call that fiction. It addresses the world of the imagination or the real world. That's nonfiction. Okay. Fiction is poems, stories, plays, novels. Nonfiction is newspaper stories, editorials, personal accounts, journal articles, textbooks, legal documents. Fiction is commonly divided into 3 categories. Okay. Stories and novels, that's prose. That is the usual paragraph structure forming chapters. Fiction also is divided into poetry, that's lines of varying length forming stanzas, and plays, that's spoken lines and stage directions arranged in scenes and acts. Okay, so stories and novels, poetry, and plays is normally the realm of fiction. In regard to film, movies are considered fiction. Okay, movie reviews, on the other hand, are considered nonfiction because they discuss something real, namely movies. Documentary movies, of course, are considered nonfiction. Note that newspaper articles and reality shows are nonfiction. Okay. Art Patron says, well, I think it's well. Okay. So newspaper articles and reality shows are nonfiction, even when fabricated. So I hope you do know that newspaper articles and especially reality shows are scripted, but they're considered nonfiction. Okay, because they're dealing with reality. The test is not whether the assertions are true. Nonfiction can make false assertions and often does. Okay. The question is whether the assertions claim to describe reality, no matter how speculative the discussion may be. Claims of alien abduction are classified as nonfiction, while what-if scenarios of alternate history are, by their very nature, fiction. Okay. So the claim of alien abduction, you may say, man, ain't nobody abducted this person. It's fiction. That's considered nonfiction. The test isn't whether the assertion is true or not. Okay. The question is whether the person claims it to be true. Okay. Greetings, my generator operator, destroyers of all skin complexions worldwide, Run Guide 8. Greetings, everybody. Peace. Welcome in. Okay. The distinction between fiction and nonfiction has been blurred in recent years. Okay. My wife was talking about this, we were talking about it the other day. Novelists have based stories on real life events and real people. Historians have incorporated imagined dialogue to suggest the thoughts of historical figures. The primary traditional African method of imparting knowledge and information was and is through storytelling. That's why I said when we say it's fiction, storytelling is fiction by the European standard. But the African has long imparted knowledge through stories. It'll talk about, the rabbit or the hare and the tortoise in a race, right? We know a hare and a tortoise are not racing each other in real life. That's symbology and metaphors for something else. Okay, a lesson is being taught through the storytelling. Okay. Now, talk to most revolutionaries, reactionaries, organizers, and activists, and you'll find that they are intelligent and very well read most of the time. All right. Most of us can quote Chancellor Williams' Destruction of Black Civilization from cover to cover, and have read Neo-Colonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism by Kwame Nkrumah. So that's a book. I think I spoke on that. I was speaking on that yesterday in word class. Neo-Colonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism by Kwame Nkrumah. Blood in My Eye, Flash of the Spirit. We read all of that. And The Wretched of the Earth. That's on most of our shelves, right? I love to read nonfiction. Hell, I've even written several. I've written 42 books. I think I've written more nonfiction than fiction. I also love to read and write fiction, though. Okay. Now, a few years ago, I asked one of my friends, who's a professor at an HBCU, why out of over 1,000 books at his house, not one is a work of fiction, and why he doesn't allow his children to read fiction. His answer: all that Star Wars, Dungeons and Dragons, steampunk shit ain't real, bro. I keeps it real, son. You can guess what state he was from. I keeps it real, shun. Actually, shun. For myself and definitely for my seeds. I got no interest in those escapist hobbies, yo. Sadly, many of us feel that science fiction, fantasy, and role-playing games are pointless, useless, a waste of time, and maybe even harmful. But you're wrong. My time spent playing role-playing games, reading comic books, and storytelling during my childhood and teen years were crucial. They were formative experiences that were as real and memorable as my time spent running track, competing in the academic Olympics, or grappling on the sparring mat. Okay. Once an event has passed into memory, it is the feeling of accomplishment, reward, mutual achievement, and victory that is important. Okay. How I feel these feelings is irrelevant. The triggering event does not matter. To fully understand this, let's examine what the brain is and how it functions a bit deeper. The human brain is the most complex entity in the known universe. Our brains are organs of staggering complexity, having approximately 100,000 miles of capillaries. And it can grow more. If you dealt with mushrooms, I'm talking magic mushrooms, people call them, you're growing more. All right. Psilocybin, I'm talking about. And it can grow more. Your brain has 100 billion cells. It also has 100 trillion to 500 trillion connections between those cells. 100 trillion cells and 500 trillion, 100 trillion to 500 trillion connections between them, between those 100 billion cells. Okay. So cells are connected all kinds of ways. All right. And no matter where you are at in your own brain development, you don't even use a fraction of 1% of your brain's capacity. You don't even use a fraction of 1% of that. That's how powerful the brain is. The more you tap into it, the more powerful you are. Okay. Your non-conscious thinking is 5 times stronger than your conscious thinking. Your non-conscious thinking is 5 times stronger than your conscious thinking. In the martial arts, when we're dealing with somebody, if you are using conscious thought to deal with an attack, there's some people, we talked about training yesterday, the importance of it, and people who don't train don't understand this. We're not using conscious thought. He punches this way, I do this. If you're doing that, you're going to be, when I talked about shedding blood and not your opponents, and I Manifesto said a better term for it is hemorrhaging blood. You're going to be hemorrhaging blood. Shedding blood is, I make you bleed. I shed your blood. Hemorrhaging blood is, I'm bleeding. I don't want to hemorrhage blood, right? So I don't want to have any hemorrhagic episodes. Well, excuse me. So you don't think when you're defending yourself. Not with your conscious, you don't use conscious thought. Okay. The reason being is because non-conscious thinking is 5 times stronger. Didn't say necessarily faster. Thought moves 24 billion miles per second. That's conscious thought. So non-conscious thought is even faster. And that's what you want to rely on in protecting yourself. Okay. Or just doing anything. When you speak, when you flow, if you start thinking consciously of what you're going to say, like as in rehearsing things, a lot of times it stagnates. The person's thinking, what do I say next? Okay. That's the same way in combat. You're thinking, what do I do next? And you get your head busted to the white meat, right? So your brain thinks in 6 different areas at the same time. 6 different areas at the same time. You have 6 parallel processes going on at once. The brain is incredible. Only one of these is your conscious process. Out of the 6, only one is conscious. 5 are non-conscious, okay? The other areas of your brain are not accessible by your conscious brain. You have a different set of neurons that comprise your conscious thinking, and you cannot directly access your non-conscious thoughts. You have a powerful friend or foe in your non-conscious brain. It is 5/6 of your thinking power. Because you cannot directly control or access your non-conscious brain, you have to work at some techniques that will help you control it. Okay. Your non-conscious brain sees, hears, smells, and touches. I'm sure you have all heard of subliminal pictures. Your conscious mind cannot perceive a picture that lasts for less than about 1/50,000th of a second. However, it is proven that your non-conscious brain does see and remember it. So if it's moving at 1/50,000th of a second, your conscious brain doesn't even see that, but your non-conscious brain sees it. And that's been used to manipulate us. They used to use these subliminal suggestions in film. It's been made illegal, supposedly. Now they can't do that. They can't flash that, and you don't know what they're flashing to you. Okay, I think they still probably do it, but it's supposedly illegal now. Scientists monitoring your brain activity can tell what picture your non-conscious brain saw by observing the firing patterns in your brain when one of these pictures is flashed in front of you. Your non-conscious brain is aware of everything that is going on around you. It is drinking in the world to a much higher degree than your conscious mind. Just because you are not aware of it at the conscious level does not mean that you are not thinking about and reacting to it. Okay. Your non-conscious brain, you say, why are you dealing with this with fiction and non-fiction? We're about to get deeper into that. Your non-conscious brain treats everything as real. It's very important. Your non-conscious brain treats everything as real. Notice how when you are watching a scary movie, you actually get scared. You react emotionally even though your conscious brain knows it's not real. You know damn well these people are acting, and Jason is chasing the person. Chill, chill, chill. Pow, pow, pow. You hear that? Oh shit. Oh. You may be getting scared for the person on the screen. That's an actress or actor. We say actor for men and women, right? You know that. You know the person behind the mask, the ski mask. I mean, not ski mask. What do you call it? Hockey mask is an actor, but it scares you. Okay. You react emotionally. The same thing is true for any written fiction as well, right? You experience fear, happiness, sadness, and other emotions when you watch a movie or read a book because your non-conscious brain is watching the movie too, and it does not know the difference between fantasy and reality. I'll be right back. I'm going to take a quick break. Old man break, excuse me, for just a second. I'll be right back. Sorry about that, y'all. I need one of those cool transitions like Jared. I mix what I like. And then, goes off and you listen, you listen to some go-go or something. Since I'm from Chicago originally, maybe play some house while I'm going. All right. So, fiction affects you. The brain treats everything as real, okay? Excuse me. You experience fear, happiness, sadness, and other emotions when you watch a movie or read a book because you're not, or watch a TV show because your non-conscious brain is watching the movie too, or reading the book too, or watching the TV show too, and it does not know the difference between fantasy and reality. Your non-conscious brain believes that everything it thinks, sees, hears, and feels is real. It cannot tell the difference between reality and fantasy, or between the truth and a lie. So your brain, your non-conscious brain, doesn't know the truth, between the difference between the truth and the lie. So you reading fiction, you read nonfiction, it doesn't know that fiction you're reading is your non-conscious brain now. It doesn't know that the difference between, it doesn't know that that's fiction. Okay. If your conscious brain thinks the fiction that you read is true, that's concerning. But we get tricked all the time to believe fiction. Okay, like the earth is flat. That's fiction. But because it's been claimed to be real, it's nonfiction. Actually, it's categorized as nonfiction. Okay. Now, is fiction good for us? We spend huge chunks of our lives immersed in novels, films, TV shows, comic books, and other forms of fiction. Okay. Is it good for us? Hold on one second. There was something weird just popped up on my screen. I don't think you all can see it. But okay, there. Okay, good. So is it good for us? Some see this as a positive thing, arguing that imaginative stories cultivate our mental and moral development. However, others argue that fiction is mentally and ethically corrosive. That is a bundle of lies, while nonfiction is the truth. This controversy has been flaring up ever since Plato tried to ban fiction from his ideal republic. In 1961, FCC Chairman Newton Minow said that television was not working in the public interest because its formula comedies about totally unbelievable families, blood and thunder, mayhem, violence, sadism, murder, Western bad men, Western good men, private eyes, gangsters, more violence, and cartoons amounted to a vast wasteland. What Minow said of television has also been said over the centuries of novels, theater, comic books, and films. They are not in the public interest, folks say. Fiction does indeed mold us. The more deeply we get into a story, the more potent its influence. In fact, fiction is more effective at changing beliefs than nonfiction. You say, uh-oh, what? What? Yeah, all you nonfiction lovers like me. Fiction actually is more effective at changing beliefs than nonfiction, which is designed to persuade through argument and evidence. So nonfiction persuades through argument and evidence. Studies show that when we read nonfiction, we read with our shields up. We're ready for the argument, right? We are critical and skeptical when we read nonfiction. But when we are absorbed in a story, we drop our intellectual guard. We're moved emotionally, and this makes us malleable, easy to shape. Okay? And yes, it led to the bumper stickers that read, "Kill your television." And fiction is very powerful. Fiction enhances our ability to understand other people, too. This is a good part of fiction. It promotes a deep morality that cuts across religious and political creeds. More peculiarly, fiction's happy endings make us believe that the world can be more just than it is right now. Okay. So I talk to my students, and sometimes I will get cynical. I fight it, right? And my student said to me one time, well, during the pandemic, he said, this will be over in a couple of months. I said, I don't think it'll be over in my lifetime. This is when it first started. They said, "Nah, it's gonna be over a couple months." Bye bye. I said, "Man, I studied pandemics, epidemics, and it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way." The bubonic plague, I believe it started in the 1700s. It was still around when my mother was a young woman. They controlled it to the point where most people have herd immunity in the 1950s. My mother was born in 1931. She was hundreds of years after the bubonic plague started. Okay, so it doesn't work that way. But those students are strong fiction readers too, and so they have and I do, but and I'll one day I'll talk about my relationship to fiction, the way I perceive it. But anyway, so they have a more positive outlook than I have, truly. Um, they believe that the world is more just, more uh, in favor of us all than I do. Fiction giving birth to the belief that a better world is attainable may even help explain why humans tell stories in the first place. Okay. As the psychologist Raymond Marr writes, researchers have repeatedly found that reader attitudes shift to become more congruent with the ideas expressed in a fictional narrative. For example, studies reliably show that when we read a book that treats white men as the default heroes, our own views on white men are likely to move in the same direction. We view them as heroes. Like me, I cannot. Woo! The white superhero story, the white. And I ain't talking about heroes like Thor. I'm talking about the white person goes into the black neighborhood and save the black folks. Oh my God, I can't stand that. I can't stand that narrative. Goddamn. But a lot of people love it because from watching it, they begin to formulate the belief that that's true, including white folks. Think they're superheroes and the cops of the world. That's why you may be doing something they consider illegal and they will come up to you and try to police you with no hesitation and no fear. Because they really believe they're the superheroes and the police of this world. But how can they not? When that's what they see all the time, right? And even on book covers, in books. I was one of the guest authors in a anthology, and in the anthology they had pictures for each character in the anthology. All the people that wrote a white character, bar none, they showed their face. But also, bar none, everyone that wrote they wrote an Asian character too, they showed their face. Everyone that wrote a black character, or let me backtrack with Asian, a darker Asian, so a Southeast Asian, they showed their back. And I protested against that. Of course, they never asked me to come and write, be a guest writer in book 2 that they put out, which they did the same thing. Because it's important to show white heroic images, but to show dark, show black or the darker people of the earth as heroes, oh no. If you watch a Bollywood movie, the heroes are light as hell, as white as they can get them. The villains, particularly the street thugs, are always dark. They're always dark. That's where the Tamil and the Dravidians get work at. The darker Indians from India, I'm talking about. Right? They Uh, they have them dark. That imagery is important. Um, History too reveals fiction's ability to change our values at the societal level, for better and worse, for better or worse. For example, Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin helped bring about the Civil War by convincing huge numbers of Americans that black people are people and that enslaving us is a crime against God and man. Yeah. On the other hand, the 1915 film, The Birth of a Nation, inflamed racist sentiments and helped resurrect an all but defunct Ku Klux Klan. Fiction can indeed be dangerous in the wrong hands because it has the power to modify the principles of individuals and whole societies. Okay. Teresa says, yes, my father, born in 30s, has different perspectives than most everyone else I know. Too bad he is from silent generation. Silence is violence these days. Yes. However, virtually all storytelling, regardless of genre, increases society's empathy and it reinforces an ethic of decency that is deeper than politics. Psychologists have found that heavy fiction readers outperform heavy nonfiction readers on tests of empathy. This is true. Psychologists have found that heavy fiction readers outperform heavy nonfiction readers on tests of empathy, even after the psychologists controlled for the possibility that people who already had high empathy might naturally gravitate to fiction. One study showed that children ages 4 to 6 who were exposed to a large number of children's books and films had a significantly stronger ability to read the mental and emotional states of other people. Similarly, psychologists recently had people read a short story that was specifically written to induce compassion in the reader. They wanted to see not only if fiction increased empathy, but whether it would lead to actual helping behavior. They found that the more absorbed subjects were in the story, the more they were absorbed in the story, the more empathy they felt, and the more empathy, the more empathy they felt, okay, and the more empathy they displayed. Uh, the more empathy they felt, they were more likely the more likely the subjects were to help when the experimenters accidentally dropped a handful of pins. So the ones who showed more empathy, person walks in, drops pins. The ones who had more empathy from watching the show, they were more likely to help pick up the spilled pins. Highly absorbed readers were twice as likely to help out. It appears that curling up with a good book may do more than provide relaxation and entertainment. Reading fiction allows us to learn about our social world and as a result fosters empathic growth and appropriate social behavior. Okay. Reading fiction allows us to learn about our social world and as a result fosters empathic growth and appropriate social behavior. Now this comes from psychologists, not me, not Balogun. Okay. I've long been fascinated by neuropsychology. Psychology. I want neuroscience. Excuse me, not neuropsychology, neuroscience. I wanted to be a neuroscientist for years. A neuroscientist and a writer, an author. And when I went to college, I majored in finance at first. I should have majored at Howard. I'd had to major in, strangely enough, zoology, and then get a master's in neuroscience. I wasn't going to do all that. Because people who, when they say, you major in pre-med, everybody I know, I don't even know if Howard had a pre-med like that per se. Everyone who wanted to be a doctor at Howard that I knew, they had to major first in zoology first. Okay. And they would take them, I think, to a veterinary practice, and they would, work there and, do internships there before they went to med school. which may be good. You learn to do some hands-on work. Furthermore, traditional tales from heroic epics to sacred myths perform the essential work of defining group identity and reinforcing cultural values, acting as a kind of social glue that binds fractious individuals together around common values. Somebody said biological psychology is the most interesting class. Yeah, the workings of the mind are incredible. I heard the workers are telling it like it is. Silence is violence to the self. They are standing up now saying it. I heard. Good. On the continent of Africa, history, culture, the sciences, social norms, and religious practices are imparted through storytelling and the storytellers. Babalawo, Yanifa, Sanusi, Jeli are held in the highest regard and are figures of great power, authority, and respect. The traditional African man and woman have long understood the workings of the brain. I wrote a book called Ori, right? The African warrior's mindset. Okay. Ori is your head. There's 3 levels of Ori. The Ori Nu, I'm pointing to my navel, and the Ipori, I'm pointing to my big toe. Ori, head. Ori Nu, inner head. Ipori, higher head. Okay, now, when you study the mind is made up of 3 things. It's 3 things that make mind. Okay, your nervous system, your immune system, okay, and your gut, your gastrointestinal system. Those are the 3 things that make the mind. Ifa says it, your head, that's your nervous system. Ori Nu, Ori, head, nervous system. Ori Nu, that's your gut, gastrointestinal system. Ipori, the higher head, your toe. Why is that the immune system? Because when you walk on the ground, where you walk can determine whether you end up getting sick or whether you end up getting healed. It's dealing with your immune system. Okay? So in neuroscience, in psychology, they also deal with the 3 levels of the head. The Yoruba has long dealt with that, thousands of years. Okay. The traditional African man and woman have long understood the workings of the brain. Indeed, the study, state, and function of the 3 levels of the brain and mind, or Ori, are of the utmost importance in traditional Yoruba society. The more stories, called essay, sounds ironically like an essay, E-S-S-A-Y, but it's spelled E-S-E. The more stories, called essay, a Yoruba knows, the more knowledgeable, wise, and understanding he or she is considered to be. Okay. So stories are very important to the African, not just the Yoruba, but across Africa, across and up and down. Storytelling is highly important. You want to read a great book of stories, Indaba My Children, by Busumuzulu Credo, C-R-E-D-O. Busumuzulu is B-U-S-U. It's crazy. I assume y'all know how to spell that one. B-U-S-U-M-A-Z-U-L-U. B-U-S-U, Busu Mazulu, M-A-Z-U-L-U. Busu Mazulu. Okay. Credo Mutwa, M-U-T-W-A. Or you can type in just Credo, C-R-E-D-O, which means creed. That's actually I think a Latin name that the priest, I'm talking Catholic priest, gave him. Credo Mutwa, M-U-T-W-A. Credo Mutwa died, he transitioned a couple years ago. He's a great treasure of knowledge. But he wrote the book Indaba, I-N-D-A-B-A, comma, My Children. So Indaba means sit down, sit, my children, because he's about to tell you a story. Indaba, I-N-D-A-B-A, comma, My Children. Now, this book, this shit, 600 some pages, I believe. I said, man, it's a thick book. I started reading. 3 days later, I closed the book because I had written it. I read it all. That's how engaging it is. It is incredible. Now, by the traditional South African, that is listed as nonfiction because it's the liturgy of the Zulu people, the traditional Zulu people. It's their stories from the beginning of time up to whenever that time, I believe to the end of time. So that's a book to read. Great stories in there. Incredible stuff where he's dealing with the history of, and he said the first Caucasians who enslaved us were not the Portuguese who came over in 1555. Okay. He said it was the Maiti who came hundreds of years before that. The Maiti are thought, M-A-I-T-I. The Maiti are considered to be probably the Phoenicians. You have to read the book. You know, whether it's true or not, it's incredible the way he delivers it. Okay. Check it out. So fiction versus nonfiction. Fiction is proven to affect us more, but both are important. Read both. Both are important. Okay. Because nonfiction deals with evidence and argument. Arguing points and you're providing evidence. That's important. It's important to know how to do that too, to research, to find evidence. When I write fiction, even, for me, you know, and I write pretty fast. People say I'm on the Nollywood track when I write, because Nollywood movies come out quick as shit. But my books are I hope they're well written and they're highly researched. So if I write about somebody using a candle, I have to research. Did candles even exist? If I'm writing a story that took place in 1415 BCE, I have to, CE, not BCE, not before Common Era. Common Era, 1415, I have to know whether candles existed in Nigeria, if I'm writing about Nigeria, during that time. Okay. So the research has to be done to know. And if they did have candles, what was the material? Was it made from palm oil? Was it made from wax? How? And then not just the candle, how they light the candle. Did they use tinder, flint, steel? How they light it? A big lighter? Guy sent me a book one time, set in the 1800s, people, black folks fighting to liberate themselves from their enslavement in Virginia, I believe. And they're using AR-15s. And AR-15 does not mean assault rifle, by the way. Once again, research, right? So they're using AR-15s. I said, brother, AR-15s did not exist during the 1800s. They didn't exist. Now, if you want to go completely off the rails and write something completely fictional, then create a repeating firearm that did exist during that time. Okay, well, you may use a maybe a portable Gatling gun or something, right? Which they do have now. The Quad 40 is basically that, and that didn't exist back then either. But hey, if you want to do it, something you can carry like this, but it's shooting like a Gatling gun, then create that. Do something, so at least we say, okay, well, we know that's fictional, but you research the way this could work, so people can now accept your world. So you create a fictional world, there has to be laws in that world and be consistent in that world. But if you take this world, unless there's time travel, and you give them an AR-15, now that's totally different. And that people, I know I cannot accept that as something they would suspend their disbelief for. Now, a lot of us, when I say us, I'm talking about black folk, Africans, a lot of us don't read fiction because for so many years we didn't see ourselves in it. We watch fiction though. I was on a panel with a sister. She says, black folk don't do science fiction. We're in a room of 100 people who watch science fiction. I said, sister, nah, you ain't correct. Black people don't do science fiction? Really? Anybody here seen The Matrix? Everybody raise their hand. Anybody here seen Star Wars? About 90% raise their hand. So what do you mean? Anybody seen Nightmare on Elm Street? Fiction. And it's science fiction. Right? Really, that's fantasy. I said, we do fantasy, science fiction. We watch it. Why don't we read it? Because if I watch a movie, that may be 90 minutes to 2 hours. Or if I'm watching Lord of the Rings, 3 damn hours, right? 3 hours at the most. And then I move on. I may talk about it a little bit with the family and then move on. I may read a book for months, depending on the size of that book, depending on the depth of it, right? I'm going to sit and with a book for days, months, weeks, days, weeks, months, and I don't see myself. Hell no, that's distasteful. Only time I see myself, I'm a savage. I'm a thief, thug. I'm the sassy girlfriend. Never the leading lady or leading man. I'm the sassy girlfriend or the friend that gives you advice just to, just bang these brows, man. Don't give yourself to no woman, and all that. He's the plucky sidekick friend or the sassy girlfriend. Come on, man. We're not gonna spend time with shit like that. It's not that black folks dumb or we don't like to read. Or we don't like to read, yeah, because we don't like shit. We ain't seeing ourselves. We don't relate to it. Specifically when it comes to science fiction, fantasy. And we talk horror. Horror is always in that science fiction, fantasy. And so street lit came along, which is fantasy. Push with it has some reality in it. It does not. Everybody on the come up. If everybody's on the come up, nobody be broke. So it's bullshit. And it's poorly written. So poorly written, they push that. I sent in a book to a street lit writer, desperate for money. Family had to eat. So I'm going to send this. I'm going to write this street lit garbage. I'm going to send it to this the top publishing company for street lit at the time. They wrote me back, said, this is well written. Too well written. It's too highbrow for our audience. We can't accept it. I had dumbed it down. I'm like, man, this is terrible, but this is what people gonna like. Cause I read like 5 street lit books and I thought I was right in line with the level of them. They were like, nah, this is too highbrow. You can't, we can't accept this. I said, damn, really? Well, it's not just that. So there's a lit RPG. Lit RPG is a genre of books where, and it's so derivative, everybody writing the same shit. Basically, your character dies or get caught up in a world where it's like a video game world where they get health and all these things like you would in the game. Well, I said, well, I play role playing game. I'm gonna write some street lit books in a role playing era. Now those I got better responses. I wrote 2, 3 actually. I wrote the Beatdown, well, 2 I believe. The Beatdown and Dembo's Diddy. The Beatdown is one of my highest selling books. Fiction books, I say. Nonfiction always sells better than fiction in case you want to start writing and you're just writing for money, which don't do it. Your shit's going to be terrible. But nonfiction always sells more than fiction. Unless you're somebody like Stephen King or somebody like that. And you're not going to be that right out the gate. You're not. But if you're doing it, and you say, well, you said you wrote street lit for money, yeah, and it was too highbrow. They didn't accept that shit either. And I'm glad they did, not probably, because had they accepted it, I'd have had to keep on doing it because making money, and I'd have been miserable. I don't write shit because I don't think in terms of it makes money. I have some books that make me a substantial amount of money. The USPI self-defense manual. That is a consistent seller for me. Since it came out, so much so it almost scares me. I'm like, who is still buying this? And I'm not even pushing it. I'm glad, but I'm like, damn, so that is a big seller. The Beatdown, which I was surprised because I shouldn't have been. So lit RPG is real popular, but everybody's doing the same thing. That's why I want to do something different. I said, I'll come from the tabletop RPG stance of, from that angle of writing my lit RPG book where, and people call it game lit now because a brother, he went and patented the name lit RPG on their ass. So he controls that name. So a lot of folks are mad that he did that. And so they started the game lit community, right? But people still more know the name lit RPG. But it's the power of fiction. That's what so many people, so many people want to be writers, authors. We're all writers. If you write a line, you're a writer. So many people want to be authors, right? My advice, if you want to be an author, is be consistent. If you say, I have this book idea, that book idea will stay an idea forever. My sister has shown me book idea, the middle sibling, right? So I'm the youngest. My sister Phyllis is the oldest. My sister Lisa's in the middle. Lisa has shown me so many different outlines for great stories. But those outlines been sitting there for 30 years. Until she sits down and starts actually writing one of those stories. If you listen, I'm talking to you, my dear sister and my dear folk out there. until you actually start writing a page, it will never be reality. And once you, and so make a commitment. I'm going to write 1 page a day. Start with that. Within 30 days, you got 30 pages. Within 90 days, you have 90 pages. 6 months, you got 180 pages. You probably have your first book. Now, if you say, well, my first book is 500 pages, stop. Nobody, listen to me. I've been writing, so I've been publishing books, my own books. Well, other people have been publishing for me since 2010. I've been publishing my own since 2012. Listen to me now. Nobody's going to read an author's first work and it's 500 pages long because they don't trust you yet. They're like, damn, I got to commit a lot of time, 500 pages. Now, I told you, I picked a Credo Mutwa. That's the first time I ever heard his name. I read In Double My Children. Now, somebody had recommended it to me. I said, let me check it out. If somebody hadn't recommended it, that mug would have stayed on the shelf. I'd have walked by it every time because it's like this thick. I'd have been like, yeah, that's like the Bible, which I've read 3 times, cover to cover. Okay, the Bible. King James Version. So it's thick. I cracked it open and read that mug, and it was great. Most of us are not Credo Mutwa. That we can do that. Write something that's going to engage people that long. Okay. I know a sister who wrote probably the most, and actually I learned from her how to write nonfiction. I said, man, I've never read nonfiction this engaging, where it's not like In Double My Children, it's folklore. Okay. This, she wrote, Teresa Washington, she wrote Our Mothers, Our Powers, Our Texts. The Ajay and Africana Literature, I believe that's the whole title. It's Our Mothers, Our Powers, Our Texts by Teresa, Teresa, Washington, common spelling. Okay. And that's another book I opened up. I said, I got my highlighter so I can highlight some points. It was a pink highlighter. That book is damn near, the pages are damn near all pink. I'm like, you got to stop dropping so many jewels. I'm fucking my book up. It's all pink. I can't stop highlighting. I consider myself a skilled highlighter. You only get the points, and I can take those points and I can talk about what that book's about. I could not put the highlighter down. It's brilliant. It's a brilliant work. I said, man, I want to write nonfiction like that. So when I wrote, not so much Discovering the World Within was pretty good, but when I wrote the African Warrior's Bible, I think I almost got there. In the African Warrior's Bible, I was reading the FTP codes, basically. It's not, people think it's the RBG codes. It's the FTP codes. Kalonji wrote those. I took each of them and I made them a chapter because I said, this fits the martial arts, what I'm doing. So I made each of them a chapter, each of those codes. Stop snitching, different. And so you go into it and I talk about why snitching is anti-revolutionary, what it does, what snitching really is. And so, and it's conversational almost, but it's smart. And I learned that from Teresa Washington. She's bad. Okay. Dr. Teresa Washington. I don't want to take away her title. And we have at least one other book from her that I've read, which is just as good. Okay. Someone said, I think we are on a dying planet and we destroy all the other planets too. Then when our DNA flying through space lands on a new planet, We can call this one Greed. Now that would actually be a great story. Okay. Speaking of stars, I just looked up Dr. Cornel West's astrological chart. He is truly the man to lead us. He has a grand trine, exalted Saturn planet, orange purple ring. That's another good story that would make a good book. Just don't use Cornel West because, I don't know. He's litigious, but you don't want to, risk getting sued. Just looked up. I will order one. Thanks for the recommendations. Good. Yeah, check out my writing. Check out other writing. So I patterned my nonfiction off of Teresa Washington's great works, and I patterned my fiction really off of Asian movies, the way they do their movies with the plots and the subplots, the twists and turns. I really admire that in the way they do their films. So, and always you're always bringing it back to the main plot, the other subplots, and you wrap up those subplots. So when I did Once Upon a Time in Africa, people were like, man, these subplots are crazy, cold. Is he going to be, a reviewer said I was reading and wanted to see, will he be able to wrap them all up? Will he be able to make them all make sense? And I did. I learned that from the way the Asian martial art movies I'm talking about do their movies. The particular movies is The Legend of Fong Sai-yuk and Iron Monkey. Those, for me, are goddamn clinics on how to write a novel. If you're not an action novel, horror novel. Now, if it's slice of life, I don't do slice of life myself, but, or, contemporary novel, chick lit, what they got. I don't know if it will work for that, but certainly action-oriented, action-adventure, novels, things of that nature. Yeah. For me, it was, like I said, Iron Monkey and The Legend of Fong Sai-yuk. 1, 2, and 3. Legend of Fong Sai-yuk has 3. Iron Monkey has 1. Those are clinics for me on how to write good long-form fiction novels, novelettes, okay, novellas. Okay. Does anyone have recommendations for African philosophy? Yeah, I would say Indaba My Children. It includes philosophy in there too. If you want to know about, as far as Yoruba philosophy, Ifa philosophy, I should say, in particular. But that's a look at the Yoruba mindset, traditional mindset. I would say Ifa will mend our broken world. Ifa will mend our broken world. It's written interviewing the Awise, the spokesperson for Ifa, Dr. Wande Abimbola, right? He's being interviewed by this individual. His last name is Miller. I can't remember his first name, but he asked questions, and Baba Wande is answering them quite skillfully. So that's Ifa will mend our broken world. If you want to talk about African philosophy. You can also get what's the title? It's Bantu Congo. It's written by Dr. Bunseki Fukiao. Bunseki Bunseki Fukiao. Fukiau. Bunseki Fukiao. And he's not Chinese when you hear Fukiao. Okay. He is from the Congo. Let's see, anybody else? Teresa Washington must be very good. Even use her books even used. Her books are expensive. Are they? Well, I'm lucky. My wife sells them at her shop. So, but I brought them directly from her. We brought her into town to speak, and she did a panel discussion with me and a couple other authors, and so I got them directly from her, and they weren't expensive at all. But I believe my wife has them at her shop. Her shop is Multicultural Botanica in Riverdale, Georgia. Multicultural Botanica in Riverdale, Georgia. I would say call and ask if she has Teresa Washington's books. She's met Teresa Washington too, so I know she was selling them. Somebody said your glasses look like mine, missing parts. So yes, talked about this yesterday. These are my janky glasses, right? I actually knocked off a piece, had it in bed with me, these glasses, and I put my hand on it getting up to catch my daughter before she crawled out of the bed and knocked the damn piece off. So I ain't giving up these glasses. They work. I just, use the hat with them to keep them on. Well, on this side. To keep them on my head. And we good. And I do have other glasses, y'all. But forgot to change them, to be honest. Let's see here. I wonder if we have mapped more of the mind than anyone actually knows. That's probably a CIA black op. Well, of course, they map the mind. They study minds and minds of different cultures, how the minds operate, and all kinds of shit, because they want to control the mind. But African people have been long studying the mind, mapped it out, how it works. All right, y'all. So we have reached, wow, okay, we're over now. We've reached our time. Thank you for hanging out with me. I'll say like my wife, in honor of her, be blessed. Be safe out here. Peace.